In this video, I wanted to show you how to create a lookup field. Lookup field can be done in several different ways. Usually what you want to do is create a lookup field when you want the user to be able to enter a value very quickly and easily. So for example, if you have a field for a state and you wanted the user to be able to use a drop-down list to very easily choose a state, you can use a lookup field for that. So there are several different ways that you can use a lookup field again. So if I wanted to go into this customer field, and what I normally would have to do here is I would have to enter the customer ID. So for each order, you want to enter in the customer ID for the person who has ordered it, but you may not remember what the customer number is. So in that case, you might want a drop-down list of all of the customers in the customers table so that you don't have to remember customer numbers. So if you go to the customer table, we have customers 1 through 29 right now. So what we want to do is create a drop-down list so that as the user enters, a drop-down list will appear and the user can choose from the drop-down list. Okay, so we're going to go into Design View. And the thing that you have to remember is to look at the data type and the field size. So I'm looking at the customer ID field in the customers table and the orders table. So in the orders table, I want it to pull in the customer numbers from the customers table. So therefore, I need to make sure that I know what the field size and data types are for the customer number here in the customers table. So the customer ID is auto number and the field size is long integer. Okay, so what I'll do, I'm going to close the customers table for now. So the data type needs to be compatible. It does not have to be exactly the same data type. The data type in the customers table is auto number because we want it to number 1, 2, 3, 4 and keep auto numbering down the list. So we can't do that in the orders table because then the customer IDs will not be numbering the same in the orders table as they are in the customers table. So we can't auto number it. So we need something compatible. So the number data type is compatible with the auto number data type. So in the customers table, the field size was long integer, and it's the same here for the customer ID, so that's good. We don't have to change anything there. So again, the data type needs to be compatible. The field size needs to be the same. Okay, so if my field size was 5, then for short text, for example, then I would want that to be the same here. Okay, so in order to create a lookup, the easiest way is to go to the data type and choose Lookup Wizard. So it's going to tell me, oh, there's a relationship involved here, so you can't create a lookup with that relationship that is existing. So I'm going to go out of my orders table. I'm going to the relationships, and this is for the customer ID, so I'm going to delete that relationship temporarily. Then I'm going to go back into my table for orders. And again, it's number and long integer. I want to use the Lookup Wizard. So you can do this 2 different ways. You can type in the values that you want, or you can look up the values in another field or table. So in this case, we want to pull in the values of the customer numbers from the customers table. So it doesn't make sense to type those in. We want to pull it from another table. So we're going to use the first option. So I'm going to go to next, and we want to pull it from the customers table. We want to pull the customer ID. So we can sort it ascending. Now you can sort it by the customer ID, or we can go back and let's say, for example, if we want the drop-down list to have the customer number, that's good, but then we don't really have the name of the person that that customer number relates to. So we might want to say, okay, it's customer number 4, and that's John Smith. Okay, so we might want to show not just the customer number in the drop-down list, but we might want to show the customer ID and maybe the last name and the first name of the customer. That way we know which number, customer ID, goes with which person. Okay, so here we could go in, as it displays in the drop-down list, you're probably going to look for the customer name, right, for the last name, and then we'll sort it by the first name, and then the customer ID just in case. I'm not sure if anybody will have the same exact first and last name, but if they do, we'll sort it by customer ID third. Okay, so the list will be sorted by customer last name. So this is how it will look in the drop-down list. When it says hide key column, it's going to hide the primary key, which is the customer ID. So let's tell it not to do that. And we'll go to next. And then it says which value do you want it to store. In this case, we want to use the customer ID as the value to store. Okay, and we'll just use customer ID as the name for the lookup field. And you can enable integrity and cascade or restrict delete here. I'm going to enable data integrity and just restrict deletes for our purposes here. So I'll click on finish, and it will remind you the table needs to be saved. Okay, now you can go down here to the lookup for customer ID, and now it has the information where it's pulling it from the customer's table. Notice here it's got that it will show 3 columns, the number and the last name and first name. And if for some reason some of the data in the columns doesn't show, or the columns are too wide in the drop down, you can change the column width amounts here. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go to my datasheet view, and now I have a drop down, and you can see that I have in alphabetical order a list of the customers and the customer numbers. So I can select, but again, we told it we only wanted to store the customer ID, so we would pull in the customer ID there. Okay, so this was originally number 27, so we'll switch it back to that. So we could do some other lookup values. So we could select, let's say the payment type can either be check, cash, or credit card. So what we've got here is a lookup so that it will give us a drop-down list that shows credit card, check, or cashed. Okay, so if we go into our payment type, we can see that it's a short text, and we're not looking this one up in another table. So I'm going to remove this lookup just so that we can see how that's done. Okay, you see there's no longer a lookup here. So it's check, credit card, and cash. So I'll show you how to do this one where you have a drop down, but you're not looking up the values from another table. These are just values that we will type in. So we're going to go to the Lookup Wizard. Now notice after you do the Lookup Wizard, it goes back to the data type here. So it went back to number for the customer ID and back to short text for the payment type. So in this case, I want to type in the values that I want. I only have 3 values, so there's no need to look it up in another table. So the user can use cash, check, or credit card. And that's all I need. I don't need any additional information there. So I'll go to next. And this gives you the option, do you want to limit the person to that list of 3 values, or do you want to enable them to add a value that's not in the list? So we're going to say they have to limit it to the list. They cannot select anything or type in anything that is not a credit card, cash, or a check. So I'll finish there. So I'll save. I'll go back to my data sheet view. So now if we go back in, you can see that it is a drop down. And if I try to type in something different, it's going to tell me that the text I entered is not an item in the list, and so I don't want to edit that list. And so I'll just go back and select credit card, for example. So lookups are easy, they're fun, and they preserve data by ensuring that the user selects a specific value for that data instead of typing something in that might be inaccurate. So the lookup fields are very easy to use. You just have to practice those a little bit in order to get accustomed to how they work.